Opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not WSTU. WSTU does not endorse any products mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU.
The Treasure Coast longest-running local talk radio show is on the air. The Treasure Coast Forum, brought to you by... Get educated, get involved, and give us a call with your opinions at 220-9788. And here's your host of the Treasure Coast Forum.
Welcome back, everybody, to WSTU, the Treasure Coast Forum. I'm your host, Reese Gabbett, and we got a lot to talk about today. But before we get into any of that, I'll let everybody introduce themselves.
I am Connor Fuchs from Southfork High School.
Hi, I'm Billy Vega from Martin County High School.
Nicole Daly from Southfork High School.
And Sam Cromie from Martin County High School.
All right, excellent. Okay, so we are in the house, right? We've got both the schools are well represented. And so you want to do the setup for this next bit that we're going to do?
Sure. So earlier today, the White House was blessed with the presence of Kanye West as he sat with Donald Trump, and they discussed some things, I guess. And what we have today are two different sound bits, one from Fox News and one from CNN.
Correct.
And both covering this event, and we are going to see how much political bias each of the two has and how they can influence a story.
Right. And it really goes to the power of the media and the people that do the editing work for the stuff that goes on those web pages, right?
Exactly.
So you get to see now this is CNN, and they've got just a minute that on this. So this is Kanye West in the Oval Office with the president.
I think it's the
wait a minute. Whoa, wait a minute. I got to get him connected. Hang on. Whoa.
We got to hear Kanye in all his glory.
Yeah. I got to get him hooked up. All right. Now we're hooked up. I apologize for the technical delay here. All right, here we go. We'll try it again.
I think it's the bravery that helps you beat this game called life. You know, they tried to scare me to not wear this hat, my own friends, but this hat, it gives me power in a way. You know, my dad and my mom separated, so I didn't have a lot of male energy in my home. And also, I'm married to a family that, not a lot of male energy going on. It's beautiful, though. But there's times where, it's something about, I love Hillary. I love everyone, right? But the campaign, I'm with her, just didn't make me feel as a guy that didn't get to see my dad all the time, like a guy that could play catch with his son. It was something about when I put this hat on, it made me feel like Superman. You made a Superman. That's my favorite superhero.
All right, so that's 1 minute.
Wow, that's kind of sad, actually. Like
a little bit,
right? So he kind of comes off looking a little bit like a goofball,
A little crazy,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
I mean, and I think that was intentional. That's just me. It's. All right, so here, this is a little bit a longer bit, but you got to hear all of this. So here we go.
Watch the entire country and give opportunities. A lot of times it's just the overall lack of reparations that we, at any given point, we say, oh, this is racist, this is racist, this is racist, this is racist. So we don't have the reparations, but we have the 13th Amendment. We got to open up the whole conversation. So, and that's a move. One of the moves that I love that liberals try to do, the liberal would try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people. So when I said I like Trump to like someone that's liberal, they'll say, oh, but he's racist. You think racism can control me? Oh, that don't stop me. That's an invisible wall.
Mr. West, what would you like?
Oh, your question. You had one question. We're going to go to another question. Okay. I answered your question. I don't answer questions in simple sound bites. You are tasting a fine wine. It has multiple notes to it. You better play 4D chess with me like it's Minority Report. Because it ain't that simple. It's complex.
Mr. West, what would you like? I'm going to Chicago sometime, so I would like to know what you would like to ask President Trump to do for Chicago. You're here to talk about crime in Chicago.
The thing that that the head of the police and Mike Sachs met with me last night at the Soho House about was we feel that stop and frisk does not help the relationships in the city. And everyone that knew I was coming here asked about stop and frisk. That's the number one thing that we're having this conversation about. Another thing is opening up industries, and we've got to get some tax breaks because we're making we got a speed factory in Atlanta, but the shoes are costing us $300, so it's costing us too much to make things. So we need some prototypes here so we can get people back working. So China can't just beat us, and Vietnam can't beat us. You got Levi's, the greatest jeans company in the world, making their jeans in Vietnam. So we're going to need to get a few breaks to be able to have some places in my hometown of Chicago and the 2.7 million to the 9 million surrounding suburbs where we can create some factories. Now, I think it'd be cool for them to be Trump factories because he's a master of industry. He's a builder. And I think it'd be cool to have Yeezy ideation centers, which would be a mix of education that empowers people and gives them modern information. Like sometimes people say, this kid has ADD, this kid has ADD. You don't have ADD, school is boring. It was boring, it's not as exciting as this. We have to make it, you don't have ADD, school is boring. It was boring, it's not as exciting as this. We have to make it more exciting, we have to mix curriculums. You play basketball while you're doing math. You learn about music while you meditate in the morning. We have to instate mental health and art programs back into the city. So those are, and also Larry Hoover is an example of a man that was turning his life around. And as soon as he tried to turn his life around, they hit him with 6 life sentences. So I believe you say don't tear down the statues. Larry Hoover is a living statue. He's a beacon for us that needs to see his family, that needs to go out and represent. When you have a block leader on every single block, they can own the block as their own. That's something I learned from Jim Brown from AmeriCAN. We need to put curriculums for people who really came from the streets, not people who are just trying to set us up to go into a work system or prison system that applies to what people are really going through, which Jim Brown has created.
What about gun violence with all the debate about the Second Amendment going on?
The problem is illegal guns. Illegal guns is the problem, not legal guns. We have the right to bear arms.
President Trump has said that he favors stop and frisk. Are you guys going to be discussing that? Do you think he can change his mind?
Yes, we're gonna discuss. I didn't mean to put you on blast like that, bro. But it's definitely.
I'm open-minded. I'm here.
I
am open-minded.
To speak at one of your rallies.
He can speak for me anytime he wants. He's been a great guy. He's a smart cookie. Smart. He gets it. These two guys, Jim Brown, he's been doing this for a long time.
Is a future presidential candidate?
Could very well be.
Only after.
Could very well be. That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
We have a good, and the thing is, let's stop worrying about the future. All we really have is today. We just have today, over and over and over again, the eternal return, the hero's journey. And Trump is on his hero's journey.
Anyway, so this was actually in its entirety. We played about half of it. It's actually we played 4 minutes, and it was a 9-minute soundbite.
Wow.
Whereas the other channel gave us a 1 minute goofball soundbite.
Big difference on your perspective there.
Is that the only soundbite that CNN posted?
Yes.
It kind of just shows that in the broader scheme, he seemed like a more intelligent guy. They wanted to just cuck him out as nothing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the Fox played it pretty much in its entirety, and you got the flavor of the intellectual notions that he wanted to bring forth. You know,
and that second part that we didn't show, do we see the part that CNN was talking, like CNN showed about him kind of looking?
No, they never. They edited that out.
Yeah.
So Fox deliberately edited that out.
So it's not just CNN. It's both,
right. So because it's an interesting, from a sociological perspective, it's interesting, the Superman thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. But if you're a news channel and you've got gun violence, you've got, other issues going on in the community that he comes from, those are, I think, more important, more salient points that you want to make. And he made those points, and those are the things you want to be talking about, seems to me.
Yeah. And if anybody out there has their opinion, I forgot to mention this earlier, you can call us at 220-WSTU. That's 220-9788.
Right.
So
Yeah. So what I thought was interesting is that like a lot of people are like, oh, Kanye is just a mouthpiece for Trump, right? He doesn't really offer anything like unique when it comes to his political standpoint, which I think it's important that celebrities, whether they're, liberal or conservative, that they have a voice, because just because they don't have a degree in political science and they didn't go to like Georgetown doesn't mean that you can't have your political opinions. What I thought was interesting is that Kanye, when it comes to stop and frisk, has a different standpoint than Donald Trump.
Correct.
And, he was like, yeah, we can have a conversation about that. And there's different things I know for sure that they, disagree with. So it's good to see that because, not everything's black and white. Not everything is like absolute. People have differing opinions. And I think that's cool to see.
He's open-minded. You let us know that. He's very open-minded.
Going back to that point where he was edited out and blooped by CNN, Fox, they wanted to kind of show the perfect image for Fox, and CNN, they wanted to show the worst image, and really just shows that no one really wants the full truth, because the full truth is just a halfway mark, and no one wants a halfway mark. They want their side to be completely right.
Yeah.
Every single news outlet, I mean, people are inherently biased and flawed. So every single news outlet is trying to push a certain agenda. Even if you try and be as objective as possible, you could have a journalist who says they're objective. They still have their own internal beliefs that are going to somehow permeate through the writing in some way, shape, or form. So as consumers, we just have to be aware that each outlet is most likely biased in a certain direction. So you have to try and consider all perspectives and look to multiple sources for your information. If I had just seen that CNN, if I had just listened to that first thing, I would have had a completely different picture in my head of Kanye than I do now, having seen both of them. So I think it's really unfortunate that we're kind of selectively censoring things in a way. We're kind of like,
we allow the people that provide us the news to do the censoring. Facebook has been accused of that, and so many other internet platforms where news and information is disseminated, because Facebook is a lot more than just, it is now a news and media platform.
Actually, I remember last year, I think this is a valid point, that last year during the school shooting, I saw on our school newspaper, there was a few articles printed about gun laws, one of which was for and one of which was against. Nicole wrote one of those, and it was interesting. I thought it was very cool that they posted not just one view or the other, but they posted both views right next to each other, so that you can see both sides of the story.
Yeah.
I don't understand why major news outlets don't do the same thing. Hire journalists from different views.
And when I went to school, when I would read things, there was the front page would give you what they refer to as the hard news, right? And then the very back of the newspaper would give you the editorial section, right? Those are people that give you opinion.
Yeah.
The problem is that when you read the front page, you are getting opinion blended as news, right? Everybody can agree with that.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And that's really what the president's been railing about. He really would like to go back to where the news just gave you the hard news. Don't embellish. Don't, you get a piece of information. What a journalist used to have to do was, when they get a piece of information, they try to verify it, validate it before they bring it forth. Now it's just, I got an unnamed source, I'm just going to print it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why it's important now more than ever that we're supporting news outlets like PBS, C-SPAN, just nonpartisan media that really gives it to you straight, because, again, we all like to feel good. We all like to watch news outlets that, kind of reaffirm our beliefs, because it makes you feel like better about it.
That is
right?
true.
Like I've tried watching MSNBC. It's very difficult for me.
Oh, yeah.
And if I feel much better after watching Fox, but I know that's not the whole truth. And I know that it's skewed. So I think that with those independent news media outlets and, think tanks and research agencies, that's what, you may not always want to look at, but that's the way to get it to you straightforward. And I think that's really important.
It's hard though to get that unbiased perspective, especially when tech companies are constantly pushing out these media outlets that are just completely to one side. I mean, just for Vox or Vice, if you guys have heard of those. I mean, it's these social media tech giant companies that are just pushing forward all of these news sources onto their front pages, so nobody can really easily see the other side of the argument. It's just right there in front of you.
And even local news outlets, oftentimes they're sponsored by CNN, Fox, these bigger companies. And in some areas, more remote areas where they only get access to one news source, that's extremely dangerous because they're only getting one side of the picture. There are very, very few news outlets that represent issues holistically. And that's why, like Sam said, it's really important to support those that do.
Yeah, and with that kind of going off, it's like if you only get one opinion, that's all you hear. So that's the fact to you. So you don't got any other coinciding ideas. So if you don't have anything else, it's just that is all I hear. That's what the fact is.
Right.
Well, anyway,
All right.
I heard Kanye's talking. I believe I heard him talking a little bit about mental health.
Yep.
He did. He did
Mhm.
touch on that, the
Which is-
importance of mental health, which is really what we want to
Yeah,
touch on. So that was a
'cause-
great segue. Thank you, Conway, for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Conway. Yesterday was International Mental Health Awareness Day,
Yes.
and Nicole wanted to talk about that for.
Yeah, so I just think it's really important that we continue having these discussions about mental health. 1 in 5 people in America are estimated to have a mental illness, but 5 out of 5 people have to worry about their mental health. Mental health is something that should be a concern for everybody because just as we have to take care of our physical health, we have to take care of our mind as well. And so I just kind of wanted to open the discussion about it. Suicide rates are increasing. Within the past 30 years, the CDC has stated that rates of anxiety in teenagers has doubled. And I think a lot of that is due to how our culture is changing. And I think although the culture around us is contributing to these mental health disorders, I think in a way too, it's also making it more okay to come forward about them. So I just kind of wanted to like hear your guys' perspective and also talk about in terms of like generationally, like how the conversation about mental health has shifted.
I guess I'll start. A while like before I was educated in mental health, I always, and this is not how I feel now, but I viewed suicide as something kind of selfish, as like you're taking your life away from those who care and love about you. But now after like researching and understanding, I can see how it's a mental illness. Like people who live perfectly good lives can just be depressed and just
Right.
not happy.
And you think about like Kate Spade, unfortunately, and Anthony Bourdain, these celebrities who you think have it all, yet they still unfortunately committed suicide. And people don't understand that it's not always a conscious choice that these people are making. When you are depressed, you're having these highly irrational thoughts and you can't see that this is going to get better. They're not, when they do these types of things, they're not thinking about their family because they can't think about their family. They can only think about the situation that they're in and all of this hardship that they're experiencing and this darkness that they can't seem to see the light from, if that makes sense.
I think the celebrity that I guess kind of like made me like open my eyes, be like, wow, this is a serious issue, was Robin Williams.
Right.
That because I mean I grew up watching Aladdin.
Oh,
and
sure.
all that.
Yeah.
So to see him,
Mork and Mindy. That was before your time, but
the
yeah.
Stoutfire, all
Yeah.
those.
Right.
No,
Right.
he was great, but it was very sad to see him go, and that kind of really started, I guess, my interest in like understanding why.
Yeah, I think with him though, I think he had some sort of
He was-
physical disease or something. There was an illness there. It was debilitating, and he didn't want to go through it. And I think, and again, he probably saw too much darkness and didn't see what he could still offer the world.
Mhm.
Like Michael J. Fox, he's got this debilitating disease, right?
Yeah.
But he still is out there,
Mhm.
trying to make a difference and do
Yeah.
and still have a voice in life,
What I think is interesting about like mental health, just as like a general, is that like psychologists and therapists take vastly different approaches to it. I've talked to psychologists who take a medicated approach. I know psychologists who take like a more like exercise, like more like do everything but take medication.
Holistic,
Yeah, and like I've talked to people who think that suicide, like psychologists, right, professionals in the field who think that suicide is selfish, and they think that their patients should know that, and some that don't. So I think it's just really interesting, like different approaches that people in the field take, in treating it. But just as a whole, it's good that we are shining more light on mental health, so that people who do need access to it can get help, especially with laws like Baker acting and stuff.
Right.
We could debate the effectiveness of some things, but like acts like that are like purposefully trying to get people who need that help, it's definitely something important.
Yeah, I will bring up an interesting point in this whole discussion, and it's that according to the NIH, that is the National Institute of Mental Health, males are disproportionately represented completely and totally. I mean, it's a ridiculous amount more. The female to male ratio in suicide. So
it's 7 out of 10 suicides are white males.
right, white males. So I think that's very indicative of something. I'm no expert, but I mean, the discussion should definitely be there.
Yeah.
Regarding why are these white males all wanting to take their lives? Especially, I mean, it's like age 25 too. I mean, these are young kids.
I didn't know that until you just brought that. Until you just showed me that on your phone.
Yeah.
That kind of raises a question I've actually kind of had for a long time. Like, why this like range of people? Why this time period? Like, is there something very specific they all go through that causes this sort of mental breakdown?
It's almost like really a disconnect, right?
Yeah, it's kind of strange.
I mean, it ties into the whole school shooting thing as well. I mean, all these white males, it's the same trend. So I don't understand from a societal standpoint where this comes from, really.
Well, I don't know biologically like the differences in like neurotransmitters and things that go on with white males and other people. I think that there is something to be said, something genetically or biologically potentially could be there. But also I just know in terms of like a sociological perspective, just socially with women especially, we're allowed to talk about our feelings.
Right.
When I go to my friend upset about something, they talk to me about it, but I feel like with men, it seems like you guys are discouraged from coming forward and talking about different feelings that you have. You're told to toughen up.
It's not in our DNA. You know, I mean, I could have Reese can call me up and we could share some information in a minute or two, and everything needs to be said could be said in a couple of minutes about whatever it is we need to talk about, right?
Right.
And whereas a female would call me up on the same topic, and it could be a 20-minute conversation because different maturations of thought get blended into it. So females come at it, thinking is entirely different than male thinking.
But you just said it's not in our DNA, but I think maybe I don't know if there really is a difference between female DNA and male DNA in that like emotional expression. I think a lot of that is socially. Like I think that kind of contributes to the issue is saying that
the female brain is wired differently than the male brain.
Well, that is true, but but males still are emotional.
But then
people.
why this sudden increase? I read somewhere that I know correlation doesn't equal causation, but the oversaturation of like social media and internet everywhere could definitely be a big factor. How everything's kind of getting smaller, you're kind of exposed to more things.
I'd be interested to find out the males that do commit suicide, if they get a toxology report to find out what's going on chemically within their bodies too. That would be an interesting thing to trail down to see if maybe they're experimenting with the chemicals or some sort,
But
and that changes your way your brain processes information, right?
But I think it's a biological impact, and it's also environmental and sociological. But I don't
think it's one factor. There's got to be.
I think there's definitely a lot of
right.
Opinions expressed.
Whoa,
on this
hello.
program. It's time now for the
Nope.
There we go. We got the right one now.
There we are.
All right.
All right, we'll be right back.
Stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, now it's time for today's Southeast AgNet Report, which is brought to you by Everglades Farm Equipment, a family-owned business for the past 50 years with 10 Florida locations, including Fort Pierce, Okeechobee, and Loxahatchee. Stay tuned. Our big crew here will be right back.
And we're back on WSTU 1450, the Treasure Coast Forum.
Wow. Good job, Sam.
Thank you.
All right. So we were going to talk about mental health for just a few more minutes, and we were going to transition into something else. We made up a point while we were on break about how maybe a reason why, like a very interesting point about how people will sometimes say, oh, man, I'm going to kill myself, or I wish I was dead, like in a jokingly manner, like over something like
something trivial.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how, like, what were you saying, Nicole?
Yeah, so like the things that you say out loud, actually, you can internalize them and they impact you subliminally. And it's also it just says a lot about our society that we're using those things as jokes and we're speaking so lightly about them and they are so serious. But like every single day at school, I can count times I've said it, I can count times people around me have said it. And it's really dangerous. So it's just important to just be aware of like what you're saying and try not to make light of issues like that. And then we were also saying in relation to, again, like men, oftentimes it seems like there are more men comedians than female comedians. And Reese brought up the point that could be a testament to the fact that men are more often joking about their feelings as opposed to actually seriously confessing them. So we just want to talk a little bit more too about how in our society, male emotion is kind of repressed.
Yeah, this is bringing up like the male fostering at a young age how they're raised is to be macho, to be a tough guy, to suppress your emotions to at least a certain extent, to be the man of the family and not show weakness. Because when I was raised by my parents, it was mostly don't show emotion because you are showing your weakness to people. You're going to be eaten up and swallowed and spit right out by the world if you keep doing that. So that could be another reason that not just anybody, just specifically guys, are in this kind of state.
I think there's also something to be said about how white males seem to be a little demonized in this day and age. I mean,
oh yeah,
you know, you're told, no, you have privilege, you can't talk about that, shut up. You know, it like stuff like that starts to get to you after a little bit. You know,
I wasn't gonna bring that up, but yeah, definitely.
it's like, I don't know. It's
No, I mean the amount of videos of people going to protests, like to counter protests, and they'll be like, "No, what are you doing here? You're a white male. You're privileged. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what anything else is like."
It's just crazy to me that someone's opinion can just be dismissed in the blink of an eye like that, just because of the fact that
The
they're
color
a
of
white
their
male.
skin.
Yeah,
Right.
it seems very counterintuitive to the opposite, or to the other side's argument. You know, so I don't know.
That's interesting. And like every person's problems are valid. Like what makes me, like, I could be just as upset about something. It's hard to describe. If something happens to me, to somebody else, it might not be that big of a deal. But to me, that's the end of the world. So like the way people react to things, like it can be the same reaction to a different level of event. So you can't really place a higher level of importance on certain things. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
Like your feelings are
everybody
100%
everybody
valid.
processes information
Right.
a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Alrighty.
Do we want to talk about Kavanaugh for the
All right, this
final?
All right, this is the final chapter. We're done. After this, we're done.
How long has this
Put the
been in
nail
the
in the
news
coffin.
cycle?
Four continuous weeks.
We
Four
talked about this
continuous
for a
weeks.
month now.
That's something else.
Okay, so I'll just briefly go over what happened. So I was with my dad this weekend. We were actually streaming Fox News on my phone while we were walking through Publix, just listening to everybody vote.
Okay.
And every 20 seconds, you'd hear someone screaming in the background, and the
Sergeant at Arms.
sergeant at arms will bring order to the galley, and then it'd just be them escorting that person out for 2 minutes. Then they go back for voting for 15 seconds, and the same thing would happen again and again and again, just constantly shouting. And
Who goes in there and does that though? I don't understand what
Protesters
person,
probably.
what do they think they're accomplishing by doing that? They're just making themselves look
goofy
and
Right.
bad. I mean, I don't
Right.
understand.
They're just trying to postpone the inevitable.
Yeah, I don't
and they're just
understand
trying-
that.
It's part of that resist movement, I think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's kind of funny you mentioned Publix. I got the acknowledgement of him going onto the bench when I was working there, and everyone else picked up their phone. I said, "Hey, you know what happened, right?" And they're like, "Yep, it happened." And I'm like, "Well, I guess that just solves it. You didn't do it."
well, he's going to be
Under investigation and been cleared.
he is going to be his life is not going to be the same after this.
Well, yeah, interestingly enough, on this day in history, Reese, let's see if I can pull up this.
Nice transition.
Yeah. In this day in history, and it crashed. The Justice, Clarence Thomas was took the bench on this date in 1991.
That's crazy. I recently just watched a video of his interrogation with the Judiciary Committee, and I mean, it's crazy how similar.
Okay, he did not take the bench. The confirmation hearings for Justice Thomas began on this date in 1991. So, but yeah.
I just want to add, Connor asked like, how can people like do this? Like what compels them to do this? And I just want to say, like, I also understand like the people who are protesting against it. For some people, they wholeheartedly believe that this is directly encouraging sexual violence in our country. The fact that there is an alleged a perpetrator of sexual assault now sitting on our Supreme Court justice panel.
There was no corroborating evidence, and that's the problem.
There's two things about that. One, there's a difference. I feel that there's a difference between protesting and then attending an organized galley and making a scene.
I agree with that.
Yeah, no
but
doubt.
I can understand personally why these people feel so compelled to do that, and that's because to them it's a direct violation of what our country should stand for.
I think from people like that, I think that's just an ignorant move, though, because our country is based on the notion
And the
that
rule of law, innocent,
that you are innocent until proven guilty.
Not
And if
guilty
you're just
until proven
gonna,
innocent.
if you're going to assume that this man is guilty, I think that completely goes against our entire setup
Judicial
here.
system,
I,
yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily the assumption that he's guilty, but the assumption that something could have happened, right? Because we don't know, right? Like,
There's two
have
people-
opinions.
But still, innocent until proven
No,
guilty.
I
you know?
100% agree. We have opinions, right, on what happened, and at the end of the day, he was never convicted. He was never indicted or convicted, right? So we objectively in a court of law say right now he through the courts, determining whether or not he's guilty. He's not guilty. There wasn't even a case. But I think that it brings up like the bigger point that like people, feel that if he did commit these acts, even if there's a culture in society where people can get away with this, whether or not it's Brett Kavanaugh, it's something that's like a concern to us. So, I mean, I may not agree with the protesting, but it's like, and it may be, delaying the hearing, but like I think it's important because otherwise, because if the tables are turned and you have someone who may be going into the Supreme Court under a Democrats administration that Republicans thought that for one reason or another was not contributing to the conversation and wouldn't do the correct job. Like I would hope that Republicans would be up in arms and be trying to delay their hearing, whatever it may be, because that's a fundamental right. So.
Anyway, I personally have to leave. I'm going to leave you guys. Just wanted to say goodbye to everybody, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
Okay, thanks, Reese.
Have a good one, Reese.
All right.
All right.
So,
And yeah, Brett Kavanaugh definitely is innocent until proven guilty. And he was
Right.
never proven guilty, but shouldn't that mean that we give Dr. Blasey Ford the same respect
Right.
and assume her argument is valid until it's proven to not be? And additionally, does that give our president the right to make fun of a person who could potentially be a victim? Because he didn't even just make fun of the fact that she was coming forward. He made fun of the fact that, she had a beer, but yet she can't remember where she was. Like, I just think that's really, really, really dangerous and wrong. Like, I know it's kind of took it to a different level, but
yeah.
like,
I mean, I agree. Trump, he isn't the best with the coming forward and his public image. I don't agree with him saying something like that or making fun of a potential victim. I think that's wrong. But
yeah, there's just so many different maturations of the story, and we've talked about it over the past 4 weeks. One of the things too you got to keep in mind is that there was no case here.
Yeah.
A DA would not have prosecuted this case, would not have taken this as a case because there was no corroborating evidence. There was nothing here. There's no doubt that something happened, but there is a lot of doubt on what happened and who the players were. And that's the problem. And there's just too much time has lapsed, and you've got a man with a stellar career who's done absolutely nothing wrong, that has impeccable credentials, versus an argument that is 36 years brought forward through political means instead of legal means, which has
the whole setup was
it
pretty
has
despicable.
bad legs to it. If you want to develop legs on a platform of discussion, you bring it up under a legal format as opposed to a political format.
Right.
So anyways,
In regard
Yeah.
to the 36 years after that the event possibly did happen or did not happen, it may be forward in all
Right,
honesty. And
exactly.
if it were to be at a better time, a year earlier, 2 years later, just something in regard to Mr. Kavanaugh, it would have made her argument even a little bit more plausible than just political bashing of him.
Right.
Well, let me try to give this a larger scope.
Okay, we'll do
After the break.
Okay, after the break, we're going to continue this conversation, regrettably, and we'll be right back.
And welcome back to 1450 WSTU. This is your host, Connor Fuchs.
Oh yeah,
Well done.
very good.
Thank
Well
you.
done,
I just
Connor.
I just took the show over.
You
Hello.
did. All right.
Yep.
It's
Took
the
it by the
Connor
reins.
show, and then everybody else.
Yep.
The Connor Show.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before the break, I was going to try to expand this and try to put it to rest.
Okay, good. All right.
Nail in the
Because
coffin.
I like that.
Nail in the coffin. We don't need another week of this.
Thank you.
So today, during my AP Literature class, we had a substitute, right?
Right.
There was no way in hell I was staying in that class. So for the 100-minute block, I went to my debate class where my teacher just had an off block, and I was with a couple of my debate friends, and we literally discussed this for 100 straight minutes. And we talked about, culture. We talked about the hearings themselves. And I think the conclusion that we came to as a very diverse body within the room is that two things. One, at this point in time, it's not necessarily the candidate that was flawed. It's the process, right? A lot of things were brought to light by both Republicans, because right now the judicial process is so highly politicized.
It's not supposed to be, but it is.
Right.
Yes. Mhm.
And
It's supposed to be just advise and consent.
right. It should not be as polarizing as it is.
Correct.
And clearly, whether it's a Democrat or Republican administration trying to implement a judge, most of the time they can serve on a pretty nonpartisan basis, but there is that bias in there.
Yeah.
And that bias comes out on, groundbreaking, very high profile cases. So I think that I have no solution for that, but there needs to be something done about the polarization. That's number one. I think the second thing that we came to the conclusion is that right now our social consciousness and progressivism has done a complete 180 over the past couple of decades.
Yes.
We've gone from not caring about a lot of social issues to having a lot of care about it. And I think that we need to be careful that this pendulum doesn't go too far where we make these assertions and we make these jumps in logic just in order to serve the social conscious. So I think that's something big that we talked about during the break and during this conversation is the culture that we live in, right?
Mhm.
We live in a culture where people in very high rates are victims of either sexual assault and rape. And we also live in the same culture where those cases being brought to prosecution because of the nature of the case and because of a lot of other delineating factors, it's really difficult to, seek justice. And so I think that we're somewhere where we need to we need to really respect our judicial process, right? Innocent until proven guilty, not having absolutes. But at the same time, we need to protect survivors and we need to provide the resources so that people can come to light. Because 30 years ago, and even in the last 10 years, we've had a culture where people don't feel safe doing that. And I think that right now we need to start developing that culture. So whether or not you have evidence or not, okay, that's for a court to decide. You feel comfortable bringing that up. Something that my friend said that I thought was interesting is that she said the Me Too movement wasn't necessarily exposing, assailants, whatever it may be. It was just saying, I may not have reported it. I may not bring it as a case, but I just want to let you know, me too. And it shows the extent of that
Right.
culture in American society.
Sure, I
So,
get that. Yeah, and so we're opening up the conversation, and it goes back to the mental health conversation. It's I think as a society, it's good for our mental health to open up the conversation and not be quiet about things that are important to us. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So we got 5 minutes. What's next on the hit parade, guys?
Mm.
We put a nice bow on it.
trying to.
So, well, let me take a look at the news. There is I got a little clip here. It's a minute clip. I don't have to play it, but it's there's a candidate in Arizona running for Senate, and she refers to Arizonans as crazy, mostly the Republican Arizonans as crazy, so this little bit. This was actually a lecture or talk that she gave in 2011 in Texas, and this just came out now, just before the Senate, during the Senate race. It's a little slimy. I don't like that either, but I'm sure it'll rally up the Republican base because you got the person that is asking for your vote saying, "Oh, by the way, I think you're crazy, but hey, vote for me." So how's that going to go? That's going to be interesting.
It's like a small term version of Hillary calling people deplorables. So
Yeah,
that worked
I
out
think
well.
I think the deplorable thing worked amazingly well for Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
couldn't have timed out better.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
for sure. She shot herself in the foot with that one.
It was just amazing, stunning. And it showed me a real lack or grasp of
absolutely
what people were wanting to hear and what she.
Hey, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you got Cortez in New York who has been very progressive
Yes.
and what we'd consider to be pretty radical from like the Democratic establishment. And I guess that worked out for her in the primaries.
Right. And the other Democrats now are not only signing on to Cortez's mindset, but adopting a lot of her points that so the talking points are now part of their talking points. So it's really shifting the whole.
The pendulum is swinging further.
I mean,
left,
I think it's good. I mean, you have for both parties, you have an establishment, and a lot of time, what we consider to be more radical right wingers and left wingers, not in like ideology, but like just like in their beliefs compared to the establishment, they don't get the same airtime. People like Rand Paul or Cortez, right?
Right.
And I think it's good. I mean, I very, very briefly going back to the Kavanaugh hearing, I bet you that if Dianne Feinstein was replaced by someone who's more progressive, that letter from Dr. Ford wouldn't have been sat on for 6 weeks.
Right.
I think that it's more pure intentions, and whether or not we agree with those more, left-leaning or right-leaning like ideologies,
right,
it's definitely like a shift in how we treat our political system,
right,
and not just as lining people's pockets with money and being in the same position for 30 years like the Bill Nelsons and the Nancy Pelosi's, and the Rick Scotts and everything like that, but as more of like actually wanting to proceed with social change.
Right.
So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So what are we going to be talking about next week? What do you got coming up next week?
Guess we're gonna have to wait a week and see.
We're going to have to just read the news and then
Oh, there'll be something new. You already know.
Oh yeah.
So maybe another interview in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
So you think Kanye West will? You think he will be maybe on the campaign trail?
I think he said he wants to run in 2024 now.
2024.
Right. But I mean, but supporting the president and maybe
yeah.
supporting maybe some of the candidates too for the president.
Maybe.
So I think you might see him on the campaign trail here before
That's crazy.
election day.
That'd be funny.
Right. So.
Hey, I mean,
All
if
right.
Madonna can go on the campaign trail,
Why not?
and Taylor Swift, why not?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. Love it. Okay, well, we really talked it through an entire hour. It was great having you all in the studio, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week right here on Treasure Coast Forum. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
You're listening to WSTU Stewart.